Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time frame you're in. I didn't really have a particular talk title until Junchu asked me what the talk title was. So I think I'll talk about Paratantra. Paratantra is one of the three natures. Paratantra, Parikalpita, and parinishpana. Paratantra is dependent origination, basically. Different ways of talking about it. People talk about it in different ways, and I'll probably talk about it in a way that may be the same, maybe different. And the other two are Parikalpita is imaginary nature, parinishpana is a perfected nature. So the idea here basically is Paratantra that looks like things have their own separation or their own separateness, but fundamentally they're dependent on one another for their individual appearance, as being, I'm here, you're over there. It's pretty obvious that everything is separate. This is why there's so much blame going on and accusations, warfare in the ultimate extreme, but even little warfare in ourselves about something arises, and instead of seeing it in its true nature, which is not separate from anything, it looks like an event that we need to stop, or something that shouldn't be there, or we add on some other kind of idea, opinion to that in order to get the feeling of controlling it. Why would we want to do that? Because we are protecting that aspect of the consciousness that is imaginary. The imaginary, if there's some being who called me, just because there's a body-mind complex here and consciousness arises in this area in terms of the production of thoughts, the reception of thoughts, the production of anything you do is coming out of the mind stream that as it relates to dependent origination, and you will dance with phenomena to the extent that you are free of hope and fear. If you're not free of hope and fear, then you're going to fight. If you're free of that, then there's a sense, a natural sense of dancing or interacting in a you could say magnanimous way, sense of generosity about what is happening rather than some kind of greediness of wanting to control and stop things or keep something from happening. Paranoia of the Yogacharans break this down into 8 consciousnesses. The first 5 are obviously perhaps the sense fields, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, and hearing, and so on. And then the thought process, and then, which is the 6th consciousness, or that aspect of the mind that just basically provides us with some communication, cooperation, collaboration between all the sense fields. So it seems, the appearance is that there's one situation, which there is, there's one body. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that there is a solid identity or being there. The 7th consciousness, which is what I was kind of getting at, is that part of the mind, the consciousness that is paranoid, as operating out of hope and fear. Excuse me. Out of fear of the unknown, a kind of paranoia. Nothing is wrong, but what if something did go wrong? That kind of thing. What if it looks like what they're doing over there is suspicious or doesn't make any sense? What are they up to? Like Tom Waits says in his song, what are they building in there? What is he building in there? Have you heard that song? Pretty good song by Tom Waits. Kind of a paranoia about the otherness that we can't quite completely see, so we add on our own judgments, evaluations, and so on. Our paranoid mind functions in that way. So to take that a little further, if one sees dependent origination or Paratantra, and one also sees Parikalpita, or the imaginary nature, the part that we see things arise, which is Paratantra, very simply put. Having some trouble keeping my throat clear, so pardon me. If we see things arise, and then we, instead of just watching that which is arising and noticing whether we need to move towards it or with it or as it, instead we, because of the fear, we tend to try to name that or control that or have a judgment about it, that we can operate out of what we see, what we project onto something rather than what it actually is. May not be any threat there at all. Probably isn't. But we generate something, so we're not functioning with what is arising. It's just Parikalpita is just another form of dependent origination, just much more sneaky from the point of view of any kind of sanity that might be you might be looking for, some kind of basic equanimity. Pardon me. If one sees through the sitting practice of meditation, through practicing with the support of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the teacher, the teaching, and the community, then and studies the material together with the community and under the support or guidance of the teaching person, under him or her or them or they or any other word you would like to come up with, then one may see what Paratantra and what Parikalpita actually is. And this is called parinishpana, or the perfected, complete. That we actually see what this is, and it's not something else. The elseness, the otherness, it's empty of other, is gone. It's not that it isn't over there. It's not that where we're going isn't over there. So that area still functions just fine. So it isn't like you end up in some kind of magical realm that is totally different than the one you were in before you saw it so clearly. It's just that what you were shutting down on was right in front of you. And if you see what is right in front of you, you see that it is perfect. It needs no correction. And of course, anyone could come and say, who's trying to use some kind of analysis or some kind of logic that is based on conclusions and based on being right or wrong, you could say, well, that can't be. There are plenty of things that are really wrong. Plenty of things that are happening in the world that need to be stopped or need to be interfered with, so people don't do this or don't do that. You have to excuse me. I think the way the back of my throat feels, I may be getting a cold. Right here on the spot. It was a day like all days, filled with those events that alter and illuminate our times. And you were getting a cold. So it might be good if you ask me some questions. I'll do my best to respond. Sir.
You will often say that we're looking right at it, or what we're looking for, we're looking at.
I do.
Is that the same thing as we're seeing it already?
You're seeing, if you really saw what you're seeing, does that work? So is that proper grammar? You really saw what you're seeing? You really saw what you were seeing as it actually is, and not as it appears, then you would see it, and you would see that it's not separate, that it's like looking at yourself. So you really can't have any enemies, because everything is an aspect of your own consciousness. Well, so it's a realization, not a series of thoughts leading up to that, though sometimes people can take and have. There's all kinds of text out there where this is dealt with by deconstructing the whole thing and back it up into a kind of logic that does seem to work. It's just that you can't do it you can talk about it with thoughts and analysis and so on, but in order to see it, you have to actually go beyond
you said, if you see what it actually is, not how it appears. I'm wondering how the appearance of something obscures what it actually is.
So how something appears can be, it could be actually pure appearance. It's just purely that. But quite often something appears to be something that because it appears in a certain way that we're projecting onto it what it is rather than seeing what it is. So our ideas are propelled by hope and fear, propelled by materialism, gaining idea, propelled by greed. We tend to protect ourselves, protect an imaginary self. Parikalpita, we protect that area because we don't want it interfered with. We want to live in that God realm, that jealous God realm, that human realm, that animal realm, that hungry ghost realm, or even hell realm. We want to maintain that because it gives us, even though it might be difficult, it's giving us a feeling of security as a separate being who is worried about dying more.
When does whatever appears, when is that pure appearance versus non-pure?
Well, a way to say it would be say conflicted appearance or disturbed appearance or a cloudy appearance or appearance based on fear. Something appears, and then the pure appearance is just what it is. It's just that. So how does that help those things? It's just that. Well, I'm already looking at it. No, we think we're looking at just that because that actually protects us from seeing what it is. What it is from the point of view of the self-centeredness is frightening because you're looking at a mirror. A way of talking about it. More, please.
Is the actual appearance, would it actually look different whether it's pure appearance or conflicted appearance?
It would look the same, except you would understand and perceive it differently. And the way in which you would perceive it is the object that you're perceiving and the subject that you are that is perceiving are no longer two different things. This is why it's sometimes called a perception only. Very difficult to take concepts and flip them around different ways so that by contemplating that concept, perception only, subject and object, the observer and the observed are not separate items. They appear that way. They appear. Go ahead.
If there's still can there be pure appearance if there's still someone for which something is appearing?
So that's the polarity of it, and that's the difficulty is if there's something appearing, then someone can abandon that, or somebody can join it, or somebody can ignore it, like passion, aggression, and ignorance. But if you see what something is, all bets are off. So there's no otherness to it anymore. And the amazing thing is when you begin to see that, then it doesn't leave, but because you see it, you continue to see it all the time. You see it everywhere. And it becomes ordinary because it's always that way. Well,
How do we see that?
train your mind. Look at the garbage bit. Sit down, hold still, and look at the passion, aggression, and ignorance that arises in the mind stream without correcting it, without validating it. Correcting it might be aggression, validating it or explaining it or blaming someone else might be passion, or ignoring it or looking at something else, or chant a mantra. And I'm not against mantras, but mantras, unless it's under the guidance of a teacher, a true teacher, a mantra can be used to just cover up things. Something to be stylized form of ignorance. Not necessarily. It could be more.
Seem to have a lot of trouble in this area.
Yeah, well, what is your name?
Pure appearance.
Your appearance. Why do you think you got that name?
I don't know.
Nor do I. Find out. Find out what it is. Any of you have I've given a dharma name to. That's not just something I pulled out of what do they call it, hats, and pull out of a hat. Sometimes it takes me a long time to name someone. Sometimes I have it before they even ask me for Jukai, if they ever do. I don't care if they do or not. That's their business, none of mine. I already have the name. What?
How is something that looks like a garbage pit pure appearance?
The garbage pit part of it is part of your tension in your own mind stream, the pulling and pushing, the warfare in your own mind. It just looks like a battleground or a garbage pit or a mess. It looks like it needs a fixing. So the ego mind loves the self-centered aspect of the mind, wants to repair that, wants to get help, wants to get a particular kind of help. You go to a teacher, they even, depending on how strong that devotion is to the ego, not to the teacher, devotion to the ego, they might be there with the teacher, but they won't receive the teachings, especially if they start to get too hot around the edges. What?
Am I doing that?
Not that I can see. I would say to you personally, I would say all you have to do is continue. Don't stop. Meditate the rest of your life, or until such a point when the boundary between meditation and everyday life is no longer there. When you're sitting or not sitting, same thing. No. And you won't need to check with me or anyone else. You may meditate, you may not. Some people may meditate whether they realize their true nature or not. There's no standard for any of that. Although lineages try to set up standards, teachers try to set up standards. We have some here, but they're not particularly static, quite flexible.
How is parinishpana distinct from Paratantra?
It's distinct from it as long as we're talking about concepts that are pointing to something that has that kind of a distinction. But it's not. But fundamentally, it's not separate from it. So if you see that Paratantra, you see parinishpana or Parikalpita, you see what it is. That is, there's no separate things, no separate items anywhere. They just show up that way. They show up as consciousness only, perception only. You know, these words go so far and they help a little bit, but they go far enough to create some kind of an interest in wanting to know more, wanting to see more deeply into this. And that's where the sitting practice of meditation, relationship to the teacher, relationship to the teaching, relationship to the sangha is so important. So the parinishpana, or the perfected nature, is the entire situation. All three, just that. Just like that. I was going to say just like something else, but it goes off on another tangent.
So is parinishpana a return to Paratantra after like deviating to Parikalpita?
So, say more.
I guess, as I understand you, Parikalpita is like an addition on Paratantra, and so I wonder if there's some quality of removing or stripping away to parinishpana.
I don't think it's a removing or stripping away. It's actually seeing that it's the same. Parikalpita, Paratantra, they're just seeing directly what they actually are instead of what they're describing. that is perfected nature. So they've broken up into the three natures, or three own beings, or three svabhavas, or whatever fancy word you want to. It's just a way of taking consciousness and breaking it up into pieces. The Paratantra is everything is dependently risen. So there's no particular personality there, but everything is dependently risen. And then Parikalpita is that part of the personality, or the mind that starts to interpret and judge and evaluate and elevate something. So even in the midst of dependent origination, which is basically even-handed all the way around, if you want to use that kind of metaphor. Nothing gets any special attention. Everything is, as it says in the title of Sandakai, the equality of sameness and difference. It's same, things the same, it's different, that's equal. It's another way of talking about non-duality, or Advaita.
Yeah. So if the imagined nature is dependently arisen, why do we distinguish it as a concept?
I think because that's the aspect of dependent origination that becomes personalized, has a particular fragrance and odor, has a particular walk, a particular stature, a particular age, race. You could go on and on to all of that. So we're able to personalize that. Paratantra is more like seeing that everything is a grain of sand. It just is, one's an orange grain, one is has pinstripes around it, another one is a rainbow colored. So, but they're all grains of sand. It's just a huge desert of what? Sand, or a desert, or. So it's the personalization part of it. There are different ways of talking about it. The Lanka, which you're studying now, I think, for the third or fourth time, that talks about that. Also talks about the five dharmas. It talks about the eight consciousnesses.
Is the perfected nature personalized?
No, there's no personhood. There's no person. But that doesn't mean that that one who realizes this they can function in any. They might not be able to do what you can do because of your skill, but they can function in any place where it shows up. They can function as a dharma teacher. They can function as someone in a grocery store trying to find out where the more remote balls are. You look for those? I haven't recently. Oh, silly, I know, but I mean, it's like that. The specificity tends to make it feel like there's someone doing something when there's no personhood behind that, no matter how personally it feels. The fundamental situation, there's no person. At least not on the level of I'm going here, I'm going there, she's going over there. They shouldn't be doing that. And all of the commentary about everything that's going on, you always have a commentary about everything. As soon as you see someone, you notice the commentary starts to show up. Now, you may not believe it or support it or open your mouth, but some kind of commentary is happening all the time. Have you noticed? What are you going to do about that? What are you doing about it?
Staying here.
You're staying here in a monastery. You made the big mistake of becoming a monk. Did I make any promises to you? Here you are. Here we all are. What are we doing here? Yes.
When you're bowing on the pure appearance, is that whatever arises unfettered? Bowing.
No fetters. No chains. Chains of the mind are gone. You were imaginary in the first place, if there was at first. There's no more. This is why it's called liberation, because those who that they're liberated. Fundamentally realized there never was a prison. It was all imaginary. It was all Parikalpita. And dependent origination still comes and goes. So there's still suffering, just no one who suffers. That doesn't mean that the suffering for individuals isn't felt deeply. Sometimes it might be even more excruciating without the protection of an ego to constantly fill you up with hope and fear and evaluation and who caused it and why this wouldn't be happening. If I just didn't eat this kind of food, I'd be this or do that. If I hadn't smoked so many Marlboros. I mean, it's extensive in that sense. More? Sir?
What is personalization if there isn't personhood?
Which is dependent origination. So there's still, if you realize your true nature, you may not appear that much different to anybody. You may not appear at all to yourself. There isn't anybody anymore. But you still will function with that personality because it was dependently risen from in the first place, not something you did. Something you are. That's why Trungpa Rinpoche, one of the two-word talks that he gave is, be genuine. What does that mean? My way of saying is, be the crap you're trying to get rid of, at least for a little while. You have to look at your own neurosis, your own craziness, your own demand for something, or no matter what it is, something arises, and rather than just receiving what arises, which is our tantra, instead we object or we agree, which can be just as difficult from the point of view of going in circles of samsara, or we shut down. The personhood that was just part of could be called personhood, but was just part of the whole schema. Instead becomes somebody in the midst of something that doesn't like, or something that wants more than this, or isn't happy with that, or the whole world is full of it. The way it really shows up intensely is competition. Not particularly against or for any of that. Competition that you to be the best and be better than everybody else. Be the biggest, be the smartest, be the best golfer, be the best football player, be the best president, be the best. And once you have somebody doing that, then you have other people who resonate with that, and they will follow you, to the gates, because they need some kind of purpose. And if you're powerful enough to provide that, then they'll latch onto you. I'm not talking about a true teacher or a living Buddha. I'm talking about someone whose charisma and power and self-centeredness is so intense that they gather others around because they feed off of that kind of self-centeredness, that kind of rudra. I think that's the word for it. Chisho, is that the word for that? Rudra? Yes. What does rudra mean?
Tishavang, Rudra could mean multiple things. It could mean sound as well. It could mean
What is the rudra of ego?
I don't know that. Rudra of ego.
So I'll have to just forget I said that.
I'll check. I mean, if I don't, like I said, there are multiple interpretations to Rudra, yes. And I'll check Rudra of ego. I'll check and come back to you.
Okay. I don't know what it means, right? Let me ask you. Yes.
Question from Bobby Perez. He says, long time no see. I hope you're all well. Is it possible to clean out the storehouse consciousness?
No. Well, there are images that talk about that being emptied and so on, but and I'm not saying that people who teach that way are wrong. I just don't talk about it. I sometimes use another convention in that area in the Yogacara tradition. I don't know the source of it exactly, but a turning around the basis of of consciousness. So it's like turning around at the basis. So which way are they turning around? Are they turning around to come out of the alga, or going back into the alga? What's happening? So everything becomes unreal from the point of view of relative separation, or this is this and that's that, and these are separate things or separate items. But it seems necessary to watch what's moving in that area. And how do you do that? Sitting practice of meditation. Talk to a teacher about it. Study the dharma. The points there that talks about the storehouse consciousness, the alley vision. There's lots of interpretations. If you were to go into Wikipedia or Google and Google that, you're going to get not only lots of different answers or responses, but ones that don't agree.
Question from Tom McCauley.
Yes.
Does not accepting, not rejecting, and not ignoring whatever arises mean we should not accept the basic fact that something is arising? Or is it more about not accepting our interpretation of what arises?
Yeah. It is. But I would take it a little further by saying it's not accepting it, because that's another refutation that the ego is anxious to take a bite out of that, because that's where it gets its nutrition. Anytime it can get a position of strength out of separation, out of the equality of sameness and difference, anytime it can get any credential out of anything, it's going to take it. So I would say I follow what you're saying, but there's more to it than just making a statement. Is it just doing this or doing that? It's more than that. You don't, the very three poisons that you brought up and the words you used, that's not about getting rid of those. Not about getting rid of anger. Not about getting rid of it. You don't have to get rid of anything. Be it transcendental pack rat. Don't get rid of anything. You might need some other garbage. When you meet someone that's struggling with that very situation you've been working with for 30 years. Any questions out in the Zoom, Bill?
Terry Bowling.
Oh,
Bowling. Oh, go ahead, Kathy.
oh no, that's okay. You go ahead.
Terry Bowling.
Jerry.
You mentioned early about that we're the otherness that we're trying to see or that we can't see. Can you say more about that? What is the otherness that we can't see?
What I'm saying is things are, it's just it's a traditional statement, empty of other. So there's any things that look like they're somewhere else or over there or somebody else or some other situation or the rest of the world, it's empty of that. There is no other. It's another way of talking about or using words to point at non-dual or not two, saying there are not two things anywhere. It's an incredible illusion, and we live by it, we fight by it, we live by it, we die by it, and all saying, going on and on. It's difficult, and without transforming, some kind of transforming, using that same, without a revolution at the basis, so there's no longer a person. This doesn't mean there's a body here waving their arms around or wanting to find out where the hell the bathroom is at. Of course there is. You're still functioning as a living being. But the illusion that there's some solid entity here who needs to protect him or herself or needs to get ahead, needs to accomplish anything. Anything. Even the vow to be with all things is not an accomplishment. Even the vow to save all beings, not an accomplishment. Because you will find out that they're not separate from all beings. There are no others. It's an incredible illusion. Terry, more?
Terry Bowling. How do you work with that? Because what comes up for me when you say that is the perception only, but how do and I'm not sure if that fits into this, but how do you work with not seeing things as separate, or that there is no other person, and experiencing and being,
Well, you can,
functioning human being?
okay, slow down so I can respond.
Okay,
Okay. So you can't really work with it as an item, like you can't like practice that necessarily. But you can consider that as a description of what a bigger picture of what is going on. So you just look at the way in which you impute or project onto others whatever is happening, ideas, judgments, evaluations that keep that person separate from you. The fundamental situation is they're not separate, but we keep the separation. It's just too frightening to be in the same room with somebody, maybe somebody who totally loves you. It might be just as frightening as somebody who doesn't like you at all and wishes you'd move out of the neighborhood. So it's about awareness of that, not correcting anything. If there's anything to correct, we're right back on the mundane path of trying to fix things. And it's not that some things can't be fixed, of course. Some things, you have to repair some things, even psychological things. You may have to do some kind of repair work there from the point of view of helping somebody. Sometimes even through medications. But I'm not eliminating everything and say everybody should meditate. No, awareness. It's about awareness. If you train your awareness to see clearly, you'll know what to do. You won't necessarily need some kind of a roadmap. Kelly, you have still a question?
Kelly Bowing, can you say a little more about why the save is in Save All Beings? I'm having confusion. I'm really hung up around the save part of Save All Beings. Bowing.
Well, so it's just it's a traditional way of getting the person, the individual, the practitioner, the lay practitioner or the fully ordained practitioner to put others before themselves. It's just I vow to be with all things is another way of saying it. That's the way we say it here conventionally, but sometimes we say save all beings, put others before yourself. That's really hard to do, especially when some of those others are so irritating or distasteful or full of hatred or so full of confusion that they're destroying things for others. Very difficult. This doesn't mean go and hang out with them and buy into their stupid trip. But it just means do it from the point of view of your own understanding of yourself. So be with all things. The discovery at some point or points, or maybe it's not even a point, is that there are no others. And why aren't there any others? Because you're not separate from any of them. So the otherness is gone. This can be difficult because you meet a person who knows that and lives by that and lives out of their understanding. Your ego can be threatened by that person, especially if you're coming to them as a teacher. If you're coming to them as somebody at Walgreens that is just selling them some toothpaste or something, then you're probably not going to notice anything about them. So that would just be very conventional transaction. But the save all beings is a way that you, and I would say to you or to anyone, if you don't understand that, then just contemplate it, rather than have me or anyone explain. Think about all beings, and how do you fundamentally say put others? It's like everyone is in danger because they don't know about dependent origination. They don't know about death comes without warning. Most people are totally unaware that they could die any second. You die. And this, to say this in a way that sometimes sounds negative, but is not meant that way, and I'm happy to respond to any questions around it, that this practice is your preparation for death. Meditation that is about making you feel better or making you feel more relaxed or more peaceful, those are valid too. And people should do those if they need to. But if you're listening to me, then this is what I'm saying. This is to help you transcend this world. You've been coming in and out of this world since the beginning of time. Not just you, not just this person, but the dynamic of consciousness comes and goes. Sometimes it shows up as different personalities. But we've all been here many times before. Here we are again. Here we are, for some reason, listening to this person about this particular topic that started with the Buddha Dharma 2,500 years ago. It's come down through the Zen tradition of Japan, the Korean tradition, the Chinese tradition, the Tibetan tradition, and now here we are in the West after 100 years or so of the Buddha's Dharma showing up here a little over 100 years ago. We are, this is starting to show up here in little places here and there. So further question about that, Kelly, if you have it?
Kelly Bowing, I've heard you say things like, well, we need doctors, we need nurses, we, to a degree, need therapists, things like that. And
Yes.
I feel like, and I've said to you before, sometimes I feel like I have two selves, and you've said you don't. And it's challenging for me with save all beings and be with all things to choose which way.
Stop right there. Don't have to choose anything. You're already doing it. You're adding on. What you're adding on there is due to the insecurity you feel when you do that. So just receive the insecurity. This is how you save all beings. Imagine how all beings are feeling. They feel very insecure, and they're covering it up with warfare, with hatred, with violence, with finger pointing, with medications, with Stroh's Light, or maybe I should say some other beer. But they're covering it up. But you're in the midst of it. You're actually feeling that just because you're being put on the spot by your own existence as a human being, and also as a therapist. And so now, but there's no discrepancy. There's no issue with it at all. But the discomfort you're feeling is eating at the roots of what? The ego. The ego is looking, thinks it needs to choose. You don't need to choose anything. And again, I would say, as I follow up quite often when I make a statement like that, don't believe anything I say. But consider it, reflect on it a little bit, and then if you have further questions, I'm happy to respond. So I would say, I know you. I don't know you very well, but I know you well enough to know that you're sincere, and you intend to help others. Since you were born, you've been thinking about that. So now you're able to do it not only in a relative way as a therapist, you're able to do it as a spiritual path, if I may put it that way, if you continue.
Thank you. Bowing.
Thank you. Further questions? John? Go ahead, John. Who else?
Thank you. So would you characterize what you've summarized about the three natures as a pretty traditional Shentong view?
What do you mean by Shentong?
Shentong as opposed to Rangtong. Shentong from the Tibetan perspective of empty of other.
Okay.
Yeah, empty of other. So it's a way of presenting emptiness, but I haven't heard you talk in these terms, so it's surprised me a little bit.
Oh, what did you expect me to say?
Well, I'm used to hearing you speak more in traditional kind of Zen categories, so to speak, and not so much more traditional Tibetan perspectives.
Well, yeah. This comes out of the Lankavatara Sutra, I think, unless I'm mistaken. I could be. Is it in the Lanka? Yeah.
Well, when I hear you use the Sanskrit words for the three natures, where that falls in for me in terms of what I've studied, most of which I've forgotten, is a Shentong view. So that's where I'm just trying to figure out the categories.
Empty of self, empty of other. So empty of other is the way if I were going to use a concept, that's the one I would use rather than the ones that is used by basically the Gelugpa approach to it.
Well, the Gelugpa approach is Rangtong, so that's the empty of self, but the Shentong view would be more of a Kagyu view, which is empty of other, or mind only, which is another way to put it, I think.
Yeah.
But like you, I've also forgotten a whole lot, so I may be just full of shit here. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure either. The reason I'm asking you to define those is because I don't remember what they mean either.
I never liked using the Sanskrit words for the three natures. I like the way you've talked about it tonight, but I'm feeling like I'm having to sort of scramble a little bit with,
I don't know.
I
what
mean,
I'm
there's so
talking-
many ways to present emptiness, and it's just an interesting way to do it.
I don't really know what I'm talking about. So when I say that, I'm not just joking around or trying to be foolish. I'm just saying that I don't talk. I don't even teach out of what I know. I don't really remember anything. Probably similar to what you're dealing with. I've studied all this stuff. I've studied the Shen Tong, Rang Tong, and it's eventually what you see starts to show up stronger with more brilliance than the concepts that are pointing at it. It's like the finger pointing at the moon.
Yeah.
You can give that finger all you want and even describe it and have all kinds of descriptions about the finger pointing at the moon. But if you look at the moon, the finger's gone.
Yeah.
You can't see both at the same time. And if you do, well, then you're probably in your next incarnation as a tulku.
Well, I'm very much with you on that. It very much gets in the way. All of those ideas of which I put in way too much study on, but maybe it was not irrelevant. Who knows?
Anyway, we've clarified that.
I'll say. Thank you for that clarification, my friend.
Chisho, did you find out something about Rudra?
Shivang, yeah, like I was saying, it's got multiple meanings. I'll just reel them off.
Okay.
It's a name of a god. It's works that are associated with that god. It means crying or howling. It's a name of an instrument that is played even today. It's a name of a plant or a creeper. So it's got multiple meanings. And funnily enough, it also stands for the letter E, but not in like ego, but E in Sanskrit. So I guess when you use it in the term of Rudra of ego, perhaps you're using it as the cry of ego, the howling of ego.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is that's something that Trungpa Rinpoche, who is my teacher, and also John Roadhouse's teacher also. I just remember that stuck in my mind when he referred to the Rudra, kind of the opposite of Buddhahood, the Rudra of ego, one who might even be in hell, a kind of hell, not the conventional burning kind, but some terrible place where there's howling.
Chishavang, yeah, that could be. That's the reason I was guessing. It's probably the howling part of it. Rudra is the wailing and howling.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Any further questions? Yes, Jake.
Jake Bowing. When looking at the garbage pile and I encounter, what's that?
I'm listening. I'm waving at Abe. Abe has been pretty sick lately, so I'm just waving at him. But you can continue to talk about the garbage pile. I hear
you. And I encounter a particularly sticky piece of trash over and over. It's the same one. Is there ever, in Shikantaza or just when I'm driving or whatever, is there something you can do besides adding or subtracting to look more closely at it, to understand it? Or
Yes, there is. You can watch as you're doing this. When you see something that is difficult, watch what arises as difficult, and then watch what arises out of your mind stream to protect you from it, having a judgment about it or an agreement with it. Agreements are just as big a shield around ego. Always being very agreeable about everything protects that soft center, what is called the ego, that is fundamentally unreal, but sure doesn't feel unreal. It feels can feel terrifying. So I would say, just by the way you describe it, you're probably already doing it, but you're looking for maybe some kind of credential about it, and then that's of course extra, and that takes away from the intent to actually see the truth, like rotating into a credential that says, "Am I doing this correctly?" So if you don't know if you're doing the way you describe this, no way you can do this wrong, unless you do it wrong. And in case you do it wrong, and stop it, stop doing it wrong. Keep it very simple, very direct. Just, just this, just a lamp. Even the word lamp covers it up. Just a Peugeot, just a Buick LeSabre, just a palm tree, just a bar of ivory soap. Just that, just that. Augie, go ahead.
Augie Bowing. You referred earlier to that commentary that's often going on in our heads, and Trungpa Rinpoche writes about this compulsion to report back to headquarters. Is
Yes.
that basically the voice of the ego?
Yeah. And you know, that's a reporting, that's similar to what's probably, I don't know for sure, but probably what's happening to Jake is that it's some kind of a, we're doing it, we're working on it, we're looking at what shows up, and then we're watching our opinion or a judgment of it, and then we're tracking that, and then we're trying to stop from doing that so we can see more clearly. And then we're somewhat reporting back to headquarters, which is the central head, which is ego, is to see, are we doing this right? Because even ego wants to attain enlightenment. Yeah, the ego, this is how we get on this path, is we want to attain enlightenment, don't we? Yeah. What do you think, guys? Enlightenment? Yeah. Let's attain that. So, and there are people, if you spend much time on YouTube, there are people out there, I've met one person, and I'm not going to say too much, I don't want to say his name, but this person will guarantee you enlightenment. He says 98. He said, how many of your students are enlightened? And I said, all of them. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, they're working on it, but they just don't know they're enlightened yet. And then he said, well, 98% of my students have attained enlightenment based on my technique. I can't remember the guy's name. I'm not going to repeat his name. He's over in Europe somewhere. And so I think that's fine if he wants to do that. It's just that that is something that my teacher, Trungpa Rinpoche, would probably call a charlatan, someone who is trying to build up themselves and so on. And the reason I can say that is he worked on me for a while to see if I would affirm his enlightenment. Because I'm a Buddhist monk, and apparently he listened to a few of my talks. So maybe I can get this guy to give me a thumbs up, and he can say, Sokuzan approved. I'm not going to do that. I'm not approving anyone. And not asking for saying. So, further question, Augie?
Augie Bowing. One reason I ask is it's so often that commentary or voice takes the form of like a rehearsal, going over and over again, a conversation in the future with a bank or a lawyer or whoever.
Yes.
What is that about? Bowing.
It's just about trying to maintain the central headquarters of ego, trying to maintain that, make sure that that's working. Even failure maintains ego, because I'm the one who failed. I could not get it together. I tried, and the odds were against me. The constant comment, the scenario, or the reiteration of what happened and what went wrong, and kind of a low level, complaining about it. And it's to protect ourselves from the unknown, or protect ourselves from the perceived oblivion that is ahead of us, called death. Body-mind complex is going down, and our identity with this body is extremely strong. And like Dogen said in the 13th century, and I keep repeating this because it's easy to remember. It's not like Shentong and Rangtong and the three natures and all of that. But it's like Dogen said, drop off body and mind. What an incredible teacher to see that. And this shows up in the Advaita teachings in India, and the non-dual teachings of the body being grasped as somebody. You're not your body, you're not your mind. What are you? Find out. You wouldn't believe what I said anyway. So, and it's not important to believe it, it's important to find that out. So you don't need me. As the Trungpa Rinpoche said in Myth of Freedom, you need the teacher so you can leave the teacher. But you need the teacher. You need the one who's the teacher. At least that's how it looks over here. I certainly needed both of my teachers and all the other students that were around me at the time, and And all of my, how many wives have I had? 15 wives, all teachers. I had 4, and the present one is, I had to have the first 4 to deserve.
Momoda,
Momoda. Oini.
Salgol.
Salgolian. So let's say Young's the only one that understands what we're saying. So how is Abe doing? Is he doing better today? How you doing? How you doing, Abe?
How are you doing? Good. I do vaccine shot.
What?
Vaccine.
Oh, he's
much better. Yeah, it's much
much better. Oh, good. Good. Yeah. Yeah, we'll put Abe on our morning list for when we pray for people's health. So, thank you. Any further questions? Kevin, who are all those people behind you?
I don't know. It's a green screen they're a random assemblage of red-headed weirdos from the Renaissance. I don't.
Well, perfect company for you. Any further questions about anything? Shoto.
Shotogang. Dogen's saying has been coming up a few times where he says to study the ways, to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self.
Yes.
What is that forgetting the self?
So in order to forget it, you have to study it. You're studying the self, studying the nature of ego. Just keep going, keep doing that. Eventually you forget that. In other words, the raft works, the bridge works. Once you cross the river Styx, or the river of samsara, you get to the other side, forget the raft. Forget the bridge that brought you there. Instead of hanging onto the bridge, making sure that, it's like somebody that is so afraid of anything other than just the bridge, or the concept, or the Shentong Rangtong, or the 3 natures. Those are to help you transcend this world. And yet you don't leave it. You're still here, you still eat, you still live, you still have a headache, or you, like I'm having a cold start in my throat or something. I don't know what it was. Maybe all dragons feel like that. I seem like a dragon to you? I'm not a dragon. Even though I'm in drag. Can't slow me down. Go ahead.
Shotogang. It seems to bring up a distinction between how you talk about observing and how the ego wants to monitor things, kind of
Yes.
keep track of ourselves.
Yes.
What is observing that's not keeping track of ourselves?
It will fade. Observing, you won't be observing your idea of yourself, your construct that you think you need to get rid of, so you'll be more enlightened. So right now, we may think, I'm not accusing you of anything, we may think we need to get rid of negative feelings, but this is the garbage pit that you have to look at. Just observe that. Nothing lasts, and especially that which you don't push on, aggression, you don't pull on, passion, or you don't shut down on. Then it has its own dependent origination, it has its own time frame matrix, and it won't last. But if you do anything with it, it will continue to persist. This includes anything like depression, anger, anxiety, all of those things. Does this mean that, well, if you meditate, all those will go away? No, there's no guarantee of anything. It's not you do something this to get that. That's more of a transactional kind of thing. It's not transactional. That's why it's important to just intend. We don't care about the result. Intend to cross that bridge. Intend to get on that raft and cross. Or did I avoid your question? Did I answer your question?
I don't remember my question.
That's quite common with you. So maybe when you don't remember your question, do you think that's what Dogen was pointing at? What do you think it's pointing at? You think I know? If you think I know, why won't I tell you?
I haven't earned it.
Huh?
I haven't earned it.
He said he hadn't earned it. Kind of semi-transactional there. Further questions? Sir?
I think earlier you said that if we see this, we may not appear at all to ourselves. What does that mean?
So you'll appear, but what appears is that you've seen it was unreal. So your ego is still showing up, but since you're no longer trying to get rid of your ego, if you're no longer trying to improve, no longer trying to be somebody else, you actually are who you are. You actually are living your life, maybe for the first time in millennia. You actually are this lifetime. You are the karma that is showing up as this personhood. It's unreal. If you see that, then you can be genuine. You can be who you are. You can have the emotions, the memories, the physicality. Whatever comes forward it's supposed to happen. And how do you know? Because it's happening. It's occurring. It's showing up in the mind stream and the life stream. But there's no personhood in it. The personhood is there, but it's unreal. So therefore, you're no longer checking back to see if there's someone here. If you all, let's say if you orchestrated something and you all, like on April Fool's Day, you all decided that Sokuzan's going to be giving a dharma talk on this day. Let's all walk out and see what Sokuzan does. Let's get up and say, I could talk to you. Haven't you guys had enough of this guy? This is just too much. We can't do this anymore, can we? No, let's all leave. So everybody gets out, and then Sokuzan's left here, and then all the Zoom screens go blank. What do you think Sokuzan's going to do? Huh? Go take a nap. Just a way of talking about it. It's actually extremely open and light. Even the things that are absolutely horrible that are happening in the world, we have to bring in some kind of oxygen for the awakened mind, for any smidgen of awakening that's there, and not particularly go to war with all of the obstructions, all the garbage pit. So what we do is train our minds, sit down, face the wall, and watch the garbage come and go. But don't take the garbage as some kind of a credential that you get to go out and blame somebody else, punish somebody, or you don't get to do that. Just be responsible, receive. If it's showing up and it feels like crap, it probably is. Who better to take it than other people who don't know what to do with it and just causes them to fight and pass that anger on to others by hurting others. You take it. Save all beings. Put others before yourself. You can do it. This doesn't mean everybody all at once. It means might be your partner. It might mean your child. This doesn't mean letting your child run your life. I'm talking about that. Unless it's Rumi, and Rumi gets to do whatever he wants, of course. And probably Abe does too. Further questions? We've been here an hour, haven't we? Well, let's all jump up and leave.
Dedicate the merit.
We'll dedicate the merit. Yes, we'll dedicate the merit. So thank you so much.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Dio san shi shifu shi son bu sa moko sa moko ja ho mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, its buildings, gardens, and all adjoining areas from any and all dark or negative energy. Remove and dissolve any negative energy or devices. Fill everything and everyone with light. Please shield and protect with light our teachers, monks, students, and all practitioners of the Dharma, our families and friends from negative forces and energy from now on. Help us to realize the truth of the Buddha's teachings.